If you place your ear close to the ground at night, you might hear a soft rain, not of water, but of footsteps. Millions of tiny lives moving, building, healing, and dreaming in silence. They carry wars and empires on their backs, yet vanish beneath a single drop of dew. Tonight we'll follow them, slowly, quietly, into the miniature world that hums beneath our feet. Deep inside the Amazon rainforest, where the air is thick enough to taste and the ground breathes beneath fallen leaves, there lives a creature whose silence hides a pain like no other. Locals call it Tokandira, the bullet ant. It moves through the forest floor like a shadow with legs, slow, deliberate, with the kind of confidence that comes only from knowing nothing dares to touch you. Its body is long and sleek, nearly 3 centimeters of armored black-red chitin that gleams like wet obsidian. The head, massive and sculpted, carries jaws shaped like metal pliers. Its antennae trace invisible maps in the air, tasting trails left hours ago. Every step seems to echo, as if the forest floor itself remembers where it treads. To the human eye, it is only an insect, but to the forest, it is an orchestra of warning. When one bullet ant stirs, vibrations ripple through the soil, through root and humus, and into the colony that waits in the darkness. Each colony may number only a few thousand, modest compared to the millions of other species, but size means nothing here. These ants do not swarm, they command. They move in lines that look like veins across the forest, connecting tree trunks, vines, and half-rotten logs like arteries of quiet purpose. The pain they wield is legendary. When it strikes, it feels, as one scientist wrote, like walking over burning charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your heel. 24 hours of pure agony, fever, trembling, nausea, waves of pain that come in tides, and yet they rarely attack without cause. Their venom is not made for killing, but for memory, to teach every creature nearby that this ground belongs to them. Somewhere in the upper branches of the Brazilian forest, the Sateremaue tribe understands this lesson deeply. For generations they have turned pain into passage. When a boy becomes a man, he must face the bullet ants. The elders prepare woven gloves, thick leaves sewn into tubes, filled with hundreds of live ants whose stingers are pressed inward, waiting. The boy slips his hands in. For 10 minutes, he must stand still. The ants, enraged, sting over and over again. Muscles seize, sweat pours, the mind spirals into fire. But when it's over, he does not scream. He smiles, because in that pain, he learns stillness, the most sacred of all lessons. When he removes the gloves, his hands are swollen, trembling like the surface of boiling water. And the forest somehow feels quieter. For the bullet ants, life is built around patience. They do not run like army ants or scatter like fire ants. They walk, always walk, with the same slow rhythm, tapping wood with their legs like the ticking of an unseen clock. They live beneath trees whose roots drip with moisture, building chambers from soil and resin, each tunnel polished by the passage of thousands of feet. Inside, larvae hang from the ceiling, pale and soft like pearls in the dark. Workers feed them from their jaws, each drop of nectar or prey carefully measured. A chemistry of care written in scent. No ant speaks here. They communicate in perfume. One molecule of alarm can turn peace into chaos, another can soothe an entire army into sleep. The queen, hidden deep within the core of the nest, controls all of this not by movement or sound, but by fragrance. She is the bullet queen. Larger than any of her daughters, her body is sculpted for stillness. She moves rarely, and when she does, the colony feels it like thunder. Her abdomen pulses with life, laying eggs that carry her scent, her signature, her decree. Each one smells slightly different, enough to guide workers, to define rank, to maintain order in a kingdom without eyes or voices. If you were to see her, she would seem motionless, a dark stone in a breathing chamber, surrounded by caretakers that lick her body clean and feed her droplets of nectar. But her presence hums through the soil. The chemical symphony she conducts extends far beyond her reach. Her subjects know her not by sight, but by the invisible trail she leaves on their world. Scientists believe the queen's venom differs slightly. Thicker, perhaps more potent. though she rarely uses it. Her stinger is a relic of defense she no longer needs. Her power lies in stillness, not in battle. The workers fight for her, die for her, and will never meet her gaze. If one worker strays too far, loses her scent, she's treated as a ghost, attacked without hesitation. Memory here is written in molecules. Forget, and you cease to exist. In the dim chambers of her nest, the queen does not dream, but she does something close. She listens to the heartbeats of her world, the vibrations of soldiers tapping the walls, the rustle of larvae being fed, the distant thunder of rain seeping into the soil. It is said that when the first drop of the rainy season touches the roof of her chamber, she begins to lay faster, as if the sky itself has spoken. Outside, the colony stretches like a living forest within the forest, tunnels leading to chambers where workers rest head to head, antennae touching. They hum together, not with sound but with rhythm. The bullet ants' march is slow, deliberate, ritualistic, a ceremony of labour repeated over centuries. The jungle hums back, accepting them as pulse and blood. If you close your eyes now and imagine standing barefoot on the forest floor, you might feel a faint tremor. That is not thunder. It is the rhythm of life beneath the leaves, the quiet heartbeat of the Bullet Queen's empire. Her daughters roam like slow raindrops under moonlight, their stingers folded, their bodies glistening in the humidity. They carry food, larvae, resin, and the invisible signature of her rule. Each step they take hums with patience. Each breath of the forest thickens with her perfume. By dawn the forest will forget them, but the soil remembers, and deep below, in chambers warm with scent and sound, the queen breathes again, sending out another wave of life as gentle as sleep, as inevitable as pain, as endless as rain. There are nights in the heart of the tropics when the earth itself seems to move, when the undergrowth whispers, and the moonlight flickers not because of clouds, but because of the passage of a living tide. It begins with a tremor so faint you might think it a breeze, a vibration that travels through the roots and the dust, gathering density as it spreads, until the forest floor begins to pulse with a rhythm older than any empire built by man. That is the sound of Ixoton, the army ants, beginning their nightly march. To look upon them is to watch organizations stripped of mercy, a choreography of hunger guided by invisible scent maps that thread through soil, bark, and air. Each individual, small and unremarkable, becomes part of a moving continent of legs and jaws, flowing like oil across the forest floor. They build nothing permanent, for their home is motion itself. They sleep where their bodies interlock, tens of thousands weaving together in a living fabric that breathes and shifts with the slow expansion and contraction of an organism larger than thought. The bivouac, their temporary nest, forms each dusk, a wall of living ants clinging to one another, sealing the queen and her brood within a sphere of warmth and humidity, their bodies absorbing the trembling heartbeat of the colony. When morning returns, the bivouac dissolves. The wall becomes soldiers again, the ceiling turns into scouts, the floor melts back into the forest. Nothing is wasted, nothing is left behind. Their architecture is made of patience and obedience. Each army ant is born into a caste, tiny workers with fine jaws that cut flesh from insects, larger ones that carry the spoils home, and the colossal-headed soldiers whose mandibles are so powerful they can pierce the skin of a frog. Together, they form an army without hesitation, a moving geometry of violence that devours anything it meets, yet leaves behind only bones and silence. At the heart of this marching nation lies their queen, swollen and immense, her abdomen stretching with life to many times the size of her attendants. She never sees the world her army conquers. She remains enclosed, tended and fed, her eggs carried away in lines that shimmer like black mercury under the dim canopy. Each egg carries her scent, her decree, her signature, a living document that commands obedience across miles of jungle. To walk near them is to feel the air change as if it thickens with intention. The faint smell of formic acid clings to the wind, sharp and metallic, and when one ant bites, the rest follow like lightning crawling across the forest floor. Small insects flee upward, spiders release their threads, even birds fall silent, for they know that for the next hour the ground belongs to the legion. The Essiton Bocelli colonies of Central and South America are not conquerors of land, but of the moment. They cleanse everything, consuming beetles, crickets, centipedes, even scorpions, and when nothing is left to devour, they move on, the last stragglers carrying eggs and larvae between their jaws, their path disappearing into a line of dim, moving shadow. At night, if you lie awake and listen closely, their passage sounds like rain, not the rain that falls from clouds, but the rain that falls upward, countless feet striking leaves, pebbles, and stems, a whispering percussion that rises into the canopy like breath. It is the sound of time being eaten clean. Across the Atlantic, on another continent veined with dust and sun, their African cousins rise with the same hunger. The driver ants, Duralus nigricans, turn the red soil of the savannah into black tide. When they march, it is said the earth darkens. The drivers are larger, heavier, their jaws shaped like knives drawn from the forge of evolution. Each soldier's head gleams with a reddish hue under the morning light, and their mandibles open so wide that some must be carried by workers after they clamp shut on prey, unable to release. The colony may reach 20 million, a population greater than some human cities, and yet they move as one, guided by scent trails so precise that a single misstep can cause chaos. But chaos is rare here. Theirs is a discipline born not of thought but of inheritance, a memory carried in the body. They live beneath the savanna floor in vast labyrinths that twist for meters underground, with tunnels wide enough for birds to vanish in. During the dry season, the colony rests, brooding, conserving energy, storing the pulse of hunger like a held breath. Then, when the rains come and the earth softens, the army awakens. The surface world becomes a battlefield. Columns as wide as rivers pour from the soil, branching into tributaries that fan through the grass. They move with a sound like rustling silk, a hiss that swells and fades, as if the land itself were breathing. Anything in their path, insect, lizard, fledgling bird or snake, is engulfed. Their jaws snap shut not for cruelty, but for necessity. The scent of death becomes instruction, the pheromone of attack a hymn. Those who have witnessed their advance speak of the way animals flee before them. Frogs leaping toward water, rodents darting up trees, even snakes lifting their heads in silent alarm. Farmers in equatorial Africa know to step aside when the black wave approaches. They close their huts, lift their children, and wait until the earth stops moving. When the wave passes, it leaves behind clean bones, a landscape polished by hunger. And yet there is beauty in the precision. Each driver ant, though blind, knows its place in the moving pattern. Soldiers guard the flanks, workers transport larvae in their jaws, scouts fan ahead to mark new routes. When the queen travels, a massive body the size of a human thumb, she is carried by her daughters. Hidden within a shield of tens of thousands of bodies, a breathing palanquin of devotion. Night after night this pattern repeats. Feast, march, dissolve. The colony never stops, only transforms, its energy cycling between stillness and movement like the beating of a colossal heart. If you were to kneel beside the trail of a driver ant army and close your eyes, you would hear the same rhythm that echoed under the South American canopy. That same rain made of feet. But here it is heavier, denser, metallic. The air is drier, the ground harder, and yet the music remains. The song of order, the hymn of motion. Scientists studying Doralus nigricans have measured the rate of their movement, 45 centimeters per minute. That sounds slow until you imagine 20 million bodies moving together. Each minute, another inch of savanna is rewritten. Each hour, a new clearing is born. Their tracks can extend for hundreds of meters, shining faintly with formic acid under the sun. They follow scent, yes, but also gravity and temperature, choosing paths where the air cools, where the wind carries fewer predators, where the scent of the Queen's last command still lingers. At the end of every day's march, they stop and rebuild, a bivouac again, but deeper, darker, denser than their American kin. The walls glisten with moisture, formed of living bodies locked together in an architecture of endurance. Inside, larvae are fed with liquid protein, secreted from the crops of foragers. Soldiers guard the outer shell, mandibles raised toward the open air. If you were to shine a light into their bivouac, it would ripple as though alive, the surface shifting to conceal its queen. To sleep near them is to feel the pulse of industry. Even in rest, the army dreams of motion. Even in stillness, their muscles tremble with purpose. Somewhere above, hyenas move, lions pass, rains begin again. But beneath them, under layers of dust and root, the empire of the ants expands quietly, in cycles too vast to be seen, too small to be felt, unless you listen. And if you listen long enough, you might begin to sense that what we call chaos in the forest is, to them, an order far purer than ours, a structure without walls, a discipline without cruelty, a harmony without thought. They do not ask who leads or why they march. They are the march, and the march is everything. When dawn comes, the army vanishes. Birds descend to pick through the remnants, fragments of wings, crushed shells, pieces of the night left behind like ash. The ground, once black with movement, now looks pale again, littered only with the faint scent of acid and heat. Yet even then, the forest is not still. Beneath the surface, the drivers are turning, coiling back upon themselves, preparing the next wave. And so, somewhere between the jungles of the Americas and the savannas of Africa, two legions march in opposite directions, guided by no map, united by the same rhythm. A rhythm that has outlasted kings, continents, and time itself. If you could place your ear against the soil and listen, you would hear them. The whisper of armies made of dust and hunger. They are the architects of silence, the sculptors of fear, the keepers of motion. When the night deepens and the world slows, their rain of footsteps begins again. And the earth trembles not from thunder, but from discipline. And if you listen long enough, it begins to sound almost like breathing. There are landscapes where the soil itself seems alive, where every grain of dust hides a warning, and where the slightest vibration, a dropped seed, a falling leaf, a misplaced step, can awaken a storm that rises not from sky or wind, but from beneath the skin of the earth. Beneath such soil, beneath the fragile crust of grass and root, waits the Solenopsis invicta, the fire ant, a creature whose kingdom burns not with flame, but with heat born of venom and will. The fire ant does not build monuments. It sculpts labyrinths of clay, chambers stacked like lungs, breathing through narrow shafts that pierce the soil in perfect geometry. When rain falls, the colony drinks it. When sun returns, the clay hardens, becoming fortress and tomb in one. To look upon a mound of fire ants is to see a volcano asleep. The surface appears still, cracked and ordinary. But beneath that crust, 100,000 jaws whisper in unison, a murmur so soft it feels like static. Each ant moves with precision, every muscle tuned to the colony's pulse. They live by chemistry, not by thought. One molecule of alarm pheromone released by a crushed scout can summon chaos in a heartbeat, and chaos for them means order. Workers rise in spirals from hidden tunnels, soldiers flood the mound's lip, and suddenly the stillness breaks into a slow red shimmer. The fire ant is small, barely half a centimetre long, but built like a weapon. Its body a red copper armour segmented with cruel symmetry, its jaws serrated, its sting a needle forged from necessity. The venom it carries is an alkaloid called solenopsin, an oily drop of chemical heat that burns the skin, swells the flesh, and sets the nerves alight. Those who have felt it describe the pain as fire trapped beneath the skin, as if the blood itself were trying to escape. And yet, for the fire ant, pain is language. To sting is to speak. To burn is to claim. When the colony is disturbed, by a raindrop, a shadow, or the vibration of a human footstep, hundreds rise at once, climbing, gripping, anchoring themselves to any surface. Their coordination is uncanny, almost supernatural. They do not attack singly. They wait until hundreds are in position, then sting in unison, as if following a conductor only they can smell. The result is a wave of heat, a collective act of defense so synchronized that even the forest seems to recoil. They are survivors of flood, conquerors of flame, engineers of resilience. When heavy rain drowns their nest, they do not scatter or die. They cling to one another, building a living raft from their bodies, heads interlocked with legs, abdomens buoyed by trapped air, carrying their queen at the center like an ember preserved from extinction. For days they drift upon brown floodwater, a breathing island of patience, moving wherever the current chooses, until land appears again and the colony crawls ashore to rebuild from mud and memory. There is no despair here, no hesitation, only repetition, the rhythm of persistence written into their flesh. In the shimmering heat of southern fields, the fire ant thrives among roots, machinery, and concrete. It colonizes the edges of cities, slipping between cables and pipes, building worlds within our own. It has no need for peace. Its peace is conquest. In the stillness of night, when the air hums with electricity and the earth cools beneath sodium light, they emerge from the cracks, exploring by scent, searching for the slightest sweetness, the faintest pulse of protein. They live where humans live, drawn to warmth, to vibration, to the invisible threads of civilization. And when found, they settle, quietly, patiently, until disturbed. Then the ground ignites again. Those who study them say the secret of their success lies not in aggression, but in cooperation, the perfect, unyielding translation of scent into action. They know no individuality. They know only response. One signal, and the entire colony moves as muscle and nerve, one body made of thousands. The result is a system more exact than clockwork, more beautiful than war. Yet, when you watch them up close, under magnification, there is something else, a strange grace in the way they curve their antennae, in the shimmer of their chitin under sunlight, in the almost musical timing of their strikes. They are not chaotic, they are metronomic. Each step echoes the step before it, each sting a note in a song of survival. And so the fire ant, feared and cursed, remains a composer of its own elemental music, a quiet symphony of heat and discipline that burns beneath the skin of the earth. Where the fire ant burns, the trapjaw ant snaps. If the world of the Solenopsis is heat, then the world of Odontomachus is speed, a universe of tension coiled so tightly that the slightest breath can set it loose. In the dim undergrowth of South America, among the roots of trees wrapped in vines and moss, the trapjaw ant waits in stillness. Its body is bronze, metallic, polished like old armour. Its mandibles stretch impossibly wide like twin blades drawn from its head, held open at an angle of 180 degrees, and then, in an instant, they close, not with sound, but with impact. The jaws of Odontomachus bowery strike at a speed measured in meters per second. The snap is so fast that it releases a burst of air audible even to the human ear, a whisper of violence too swift to see. Those mandibles are not only weapons, they are catapults. When threatened, the trapjaw ant can aim its bite against the ground and fling itself backward. A flash of metal leaping into darkness, a living spring. The movement is soundless, except for a faint metallic click that disappears almost before it begins. If the fire ant is a volcano, the trapjaw is a thunderclap. Their colonies are smaller, quieter, more secretive. They live in decaying wood, hollow stems, or soft soil where the air is cool and still. The queen hides deep, her brood tended by workers who patrol the entrance with the composure of sentries at a temple gate. They are solitary hunters, not farmers or builders. They depend on precision, not numbers. When a prey insect wanders too close, a termite, a beetle larva, a careless spider, the trapjaw stands motionless. Its antennae tremble, tasting the vibrations of the air. Then, with a speed faster than muscle should allow, the jaws slam shut, crushing the prey's neck or legs before the mind can name the sound. The body twitches once, then falls silent. The force of that strike has been measured at over 300 times the ant's body weight, a feat of biomechanics unmatched by any other creature of its size. And yet, after the violence, the hunter stands motionless again, jaws slightly parted, body still shimmering with tension. Its world alternates between absolute calm and absolute precision, between silence and suddenness, like lightning resting inside stone. What makes Odontomachus extraordinary is not merely speed, but control. Each jaw snap is a decision of geometry, of distance and timing so exact that it could slice air without striking anything at all. The ants communicate through vibration, tapping the soil with their jaws, the way a musician might test a drum before playing. Their movements are rehearsed through millions of years, their symmetry carved by necessity, their patience as sharp as their bite. To observe them under infrared light is to see a choreography of stillness, dozens of ants frozen in the darkness. their antennae tracing slow arcs through air heavy with scent until one twitches. A ripple that spreads, invisible but precise, a silent message that triggers the next movement, and the next, until an entire colony shifts by a fraction of an inch. Time itself seems slower around them, and in that slowness lies their beauty. Where the fire ants burn outward, consuming space with fury, the trap jaws burn inward, compressing energy until it hums beneath their skin. One species creates the illusion of chaos, the other worships the art of stillness. Yet both belong to the same symphony, the restless rhythm of adaptation that drives all life beneath the forest's calm surface. Imagine for a moment the meeting of the two, a fire ant colony, restless and alive, seething through the grass, and a single trap-jaw sentinel. Waiting in the shadows, its jaws drawn wide, ready to strike. One born of flame, the other of lightning, one the noise of collective survival, the other the silence of perfect aim. They may never cross paths, but the forest remembers them both, one as the burn of contact, the other as the echo of absence. Some nights, when rain falls upon metal roofs and the world outside hums with static, their two songs merge in the imagination. The hiss of acid meeting the click of jaws, a duet between patience and speed. If you close your eyes long enough, you can almost hear it. A spark, then a whisper, a breath, then a burn, the pulse of two worlds that never rest, forever oscillating between fury and calm, between the fire that devours and the jaw that snaps shut on the silence of the night. And so, under the same moonlight that glints on water and leaf, they continue, unseen, unpraised, the architects of both pain and perfection. The earth remembers their rhythm, the forest listens and sleep, if it comes, arrives carrying the faint echo of something small, precise, and beautifully inevitable. There are forests so vast and old that the air inside them feels thicker than time, where the ground is a tapestry of moss and decay, where trees rise like pillars of forgotten cathedrals, and where even the light that filters through seems to hesitate before touching the soil. In these places, among roots that twist like veins and trunks that sweat resin in the heat, there walks a creature that embodies the strength of patience, the Camponotus gigas, the giant forest ant of Borneo. To encounter one in the half-light of dawn is to see motion redefined, a slow, measured stride that makes no sound yet leaves the impression of power. The body stretches nearly 5 centimeters, longer than most beetles, its exoskeleton painted in deep metallic black with subtle bands of amber, polished by humidity until it glows like wet stone. Its head is large and angular, mandibles heavy and deliberate, eyes gleaming like droplets of obsidian. Every joint moves with gravity, as though the forest itself were moving through it. These ants are not creatures of frenzy. They do not swarm in chaos or sting in rage. Their strength lies in discipline, in the precise economy of effort. They walk in single file through the jungle, their trails faint but unbroken, winding over fallen logs and through ferns whose fronds curl at the edges from the constant touch of rain. To watch them is to see an army built of silence, each individual carrying fragments of leaf, resin, or the bodies of insects many times their size, each step an act of unhurried endurance. At dusk they emerge from their hollowed trunks, where their nests lie deep within the heartwood, carved by generations of jaws into smooth corridors that smell faintly of sap and dust. They live in the forest's bones, turning death into shelter, decay into civilization. The corridors they cut are not random. They follow the grain of the wood like rivers following gravity, forming galleries that breathe with the rhythm of the day. Inside, workers feed larvae with droplets of nectar, groom the queen with strokes of their antennae, and repair cracks with resin gathered from nearby trees. A construction that never ends, a devotion that knows no fatigue. If you listen closely in the stillness between rainfalls, you might hear a faint clicking, the sound of mandibles scraping against wood, a patient carving that goes on without pause, without song. The giant forest ant does not rest because it does not need to. Its life is a steady loop of movement and duty, a meditation performed by thousands. During the heat of midday, they retreat to the cool interiors of their trees, where the air is dim and heavy with the scent of life. At night, when mist begins to rise, they resume their slow procession, gliding through the undergrowth in lines that shimmer faintly under moonlight. Predators rarely touch them. Their size alone is warning enough, and their jaws, when used, can slice through the skin of a frog or the scales of a small snake. Yet they do not use them often. Strength to them is not violence, it is composure. Some scientists who have watched them describe their gait as almost regal, as though they carry the weight of the forest's memory. Others note that their colonies are fewer, their numbers smaller than those of their lesser kin, and perhaps for that reason their movements feel more deliberate, more aware. There is a dignity in their restraint, a solemnity that belongs not to fear, but to knowledge. The knowledge that power needs no display. Under the canopy, where the world smells of wet bark and fungi, the giant forest ants go about their endless labour. They gather honeydew from tree hoppers, herd aphids like farmers tending cattle, and protect their colonies from invaders with measured fury. Their communication, as in all ants, is scent, a chemical music more intricate than speech. But to the human senses, it is pure mystery. We see only their choreography, never their thought. To imagine their world is to slow one's own breathing. To stand in their path is to feel the ground pulse faintly, the vibration of 1,000 feet pressing down in unison, each step leaving an invisible echo. And when they disappear into the forest, the silence they leave behind feels like the pause between heartbeats. Theirs is a strength that does not burn or snap. It hums, low and steady, like the bass note of the Earth's long song. Far from the equatorial jungle in the cooler forests of the northern world, another ant carries the same name, Camponotus, but a different destiny. The carpenter ant, Camponotus pennsylvanicus, is smaller, darker, more secretive, a builder not of palaces in living trees, but of labyrinths within the homes of others. Where the giant forest ant sculpts the jungle's lungs, the carpenter ant carves the breath of wood itself. In old forests of oak and pine, in barns that smell of dust and thyme, in attics and beams where silence has settled like ash, they make their cities. By day they vanish into the grain, by night they emerge to forage, walking along wooden rafters with a gentleness that belies their power. They do not eat the wood they cut, they inhabit it. Their jaws, sharper than knives, grind through the fibres to create passageways smoother than glass, tunnels that wind and branch, echoing the structure of the trees that bore them. To place your ear against an old beam at night and listen is to hear a faint rasping, the whisper of an ancient trade. The carpenter ant is not destructive by intention. It is an artist misunderstood. Each tunnel it carves is polished by the bodies that pass through, each chamber lined with the dust of its own making. Inside, eggs rest in clusters, pale and translucent like droplets of dew. Workers tend to them with reverence, feeding the larvae, cleaning the queen's body with infinite patience. She, large and unseeing, sits at the centre of it all, the axis of their universe, her abdomen pulsing slowly with the rhythm of creation. Above them, the human world continues, unaware of the quiet civilization below. Light bulbs hum, floors creak, and yet beneath it all, within the bones of the house, the ants continue their craft. Every night, they expand the city by a few millimeters. Another corridor, another chamber, another passage connecting life to life. There is no rush, no deadline, only persistence. In the wild, carpenter ants build within fallen logs and dead trees, transforming decay into continuity. Their tunnels aerate the wood, allowing moisture and fungi to enter, accelerating the return of matter to soil. Without them, the forest would suffocate under its own weight. They are unknowingly its undertakers and its healers, silent custodians of the cycle. When dawn comes and fog seeps through the trees, they retreat into their galleries, sealing the entrances with fragments of wood and saliva. The temperature inside their nest remains constant, a perfect microclimate maintained by their collective breathing. Every sound they make, the grinding of mandibles, the rustle of bodies, adds to the rhythm of a structure that lives, expands and breathes like a single organism. Some nights, when rain drums gently against rooftops, one might imagine the carpenter ants moving beneath, tracing their slow geometry through beams and planks, mapping the same patterns their ancestors carved into ancient forests. The sound of them is a comfort, not a threat, a reminder that life persists even where we do not look, Even in the hollows we forget. They too are creatures of strength and stillness, but where the giants of Borneo carry their power openly, these builders wear it in quiet resolve. Their world is one of small gestures, a grain of wood moved, an egg turned, a tunnel polished. Yet within those gestures lies a perfection so complete it humbles noise itself. In their patience there is faith, in their repetition, wisdom. They do not seek to finish, they seek to continue. And so the carpenter ant, like its colossal cousin, becomes a mirror to the unseen heart of labour, to the act of creation performed not for glory, but for survival, not for applause, but for harmony. When you think of wood, you might think of furniture, of houses, of ships, of human craft. But deep within that same wood, there are architects who build with no tools but their bodies, no blueprints but instinct, and no reward but endurance. To them, a beam is not a resource, but a world. A grain of sawdust is a history of motion. And when the last carpenter dies within its chamber, the wood absorbs it, turning its body into soil, feeding the roots of the next generation of trees, the same trees that, centuries later, will house another colony, another queen, another slow empire built in darkness. In that endless exchange between building and decay, between noise and silence, between the slow cut of jaws and the soft hum of growth, lies a truth so old and so gentle that the forest itself seems to breathe by it. To stand in an old cabin at night hearing nothing but the faint tick of wood cooling after the day's heat is to hear the pulse of that truth. Somewhere behind the walls the carpenter ants move, patient as the stars, eternal as the grain beneath your hand. They will not harm you, they are not waiting, they are simply there, carrying forward the rhythm of life too small to be seen, too humble to be remembered, and too necessary to ever end. And if you could fall asleep to that sound, that delicate, persistent carving in the dark, perhaps you would dream of forests breathing, of time turning in circles, of a world kept whole by creatures that never sleep, that never tire, that never stop building in the quiet heart of wood. In the canopy of tropical forests where light filters through like liquid gold, where leaves overlap in 100 shades of green, and where every branch hums with the sound of life too small to see, there exists a civilization suspended between air and leaf, built not from earth or wood, but from the tender fabric of foliage itself. Here lives the Ucophila smaragdina, the weaver ant, and to see them work is to witness a miracle of precision performed at the edge of gravity. Their bodies glint emerald beneath the sunlight, each one sleek and slender, a filament of intent stretching from twig to twig. They do not crawl so much as they measure the air, antennae extended, legs gripping the slick surfaces of leaves that tremble with wind. They are creatures of coordination, their movements so synchronized that to watch them build is to see thought itself given shape. The process begins when the scouts find 2 leaves close enough to touch. Then comes the calling, a scent trail, invisible yet absolute, summoning workers from the nearby branches. Dozens arrive, then hundreds, forming a chain that bridges the gap between leaves. Each ant grips the waist of another, a living rope trembling under its own tension, their bodies twisting, their legs anchoring to the edges of the leaf. Slowly the gap closes. One leaf bends toward the other, the green surfaces meeting in the warm stillness of noon. Then begins the weaving. From deep within the nest, workers emerge carrying larvae between their jaws, soft, pale and pulsing with life. The ants press the larvae gently against the edges of the joined leaves, and the larvae, in instinct older than reason, release silk. Not threads of chance, but ropes of order. White lines that glisten against green, binding the leaves together into a living cradle. It is not the larvae who spin for themselves. It is the workers who guide them, using their bodies as tools, their children as instruments of creation. The air smells faintly of chlorophyll and resin, the quiet scent of architecture being born. When the final seam is sealed, the workers retreat along the bridge they made, their silhouettes black against the sunlight. The nest, a cluster of leaves sewn into a single chamber, sways gently with the wind, an emerald hammock strung high in the forest's heart. Inside, it breathes. The queen rests at the centre, surrounded by caretakers who stroke her with antennae, feeding her droplets of liquid sugar gathered from scale insects. Around her, workers tend eggs and pupae, their bodies forming bridges and tunnels within the green labyrinth. The entire colony exists in suspension, not on the ground, not underground, but in the living architecture of leaves. A single nest may house thousands, yet a colony may stretch across dozens of trees, connected by highways of branches and scent. Their world is not linear, but vertical, a city of air and shadow held together by threads finer than hair and stronger than discipline. When the wind rises, the nests sway in rhythm, never breaking. The ants grip tighter, the silk stretches but does not tear. Rain runs down the leaves, dripping into the soil below, feeding the roots that will one day lift new branches for new nests. Everything repeats, endlessly, beautifully. If you stand beneath such a tree during the monsoon and look up through the trembling leaves, you might see faint silhouettes moving against the sky. Hundreds of weaver ants rebuilding, repairing, remapping their homes. Their bodies glisten wet, their movements unbroken, their patience infinite. No sound accompanies them, save the soft brushing of their legs and the sighing of leaves. In their stillness, they embody a kind of peace unknown to us, a peace that builds, that mends, that endures. And when night comes, the forest holds its breath. The nests glow faintly under the moon, a constellation of green chambers swaying in silence. Inside, the colony sleeps not in stillness but in rhythm, antennae touching, bodies breathing in unison, the scent of safety filling the air. The forest dreams through them. Beneath those same forests, under layers of soil, roots and centuries, lives another civilization, one that has traded air for earth, leaves for shadows, and sunlight for the cold, breathing dark. Here, deep below, the Atta and Acromyrmex ants, the leaf-cutters, cultivate a world as old as agriculture itself, a system so intricate that it mirrors the rise and fall of human kingdoms. Theirs is a life of tunnels and chambers, of silence so profound it hums. The colony stretches up to 8 meters deep, its walls smooth from constant touch, its pathways branching in endless spirals. To wander inside is to walk through the lungs of the earth. Each corridor carries air, moisture, and scent. Each chamber has a purpose: nurseries, storage vaults, fungus gardens, all maintained with mathematical precision by millions of workers. Above ground, their labour is visible as processions of leaf-cutters moving in single file, each carrying a fragment of green like a banner. They cut not with tools, but with jaws sharp as glass, each slice a perfect arc of motion. The sound they make is soft but distinct, the whisper of 1,000 tiny scissors in the dusk. Under the fading light, their trail glows faintly, a river of colour flowing back toward the unseen depths. They do not eat the leaves they harvest. They are farmers, not consumers. The leaves are food for the fungus they cultivate below, a pale, filamentous garden tended like a sacred field. Workers chew the leaf fragments into pulp, mixing them with saliva, shaping them into soft beds on which the fungus grows. It is a partnership so ancient that neither species can live without the other. The ants feed the fungus. The fungus feeds the ants. Every chamber in their kingdom breathes through a complex system of vents, natural chimneys built to regulate temperature and gas exchange. Some rise to the surface, forming small mounds that look like breathing pores of the earth. Inside, carbon dioxide drifts upward, oxygen filters down, moisture clings to the walls in glittering drops. The colony is a machine of balance, alive, self-regulating, perfect. At the heart of it all lies the queen, colossal and unseen, her abdomen swollen with fertility, her body guarded by soldiers whose heads are the size of seeds, but whose jaws can pierce skin. She lays eggs ceaselessly, surrounded by attendants who feed and clean her, while others carry her offspring into the nursery chambers where the air is thick with warmth. She never leaves. Her world is dark, yet she is its sun, a fixed point around which millions orbit. To stand above such a colony, even without knowing, is to stand atop an empire. The ground may look still, but beneath it beats a rhythm, slow, deep, unending. Scientists who have studied these leafcutter ants describe their organization as comparable to human civilization: division of labor, agriculture, waste management, even chemical warfare against pathogens. Each worker has a role defined by size: small ones tending to the fungus, medium ones cutting leaves, large soldiers defending the lines. Communication is entirely chemical, yet flawless. A single scent of alarm can redirect an entire army. When danger appears, a predator, a rival colony, or a sudden flood, the response is not panic, but orchestration. Soldiers rise to the entrance, workers seal the lower tunnels, others relocate the fungus gardens to higher chambers. Within minutes, the threat is neutralized. Then, as if nothing happened, the rhythm resumes. The smell of the colony is unique, a blend of soil, sap, and the faint sweetness of decay. It is the scent of life being recycled, of energy passing from one form to another. To the ants, it is home. To the forest, it is the smell of continuity. At dusk, when the air above cools and the first fireflies begin to glow, the leafcutters' trails shimmer again. Hundreds of thousands of ants march upward, climbing trees to harvest fresh leaves. The sight of them under moonlight is mesmerizing. A slow river of green moving through silver light, each fragment glowing briefly before disappearing underground. The sound of their jaws cutting echoes faintly, like rain falling on paper. They do not rest. They do not hurry. Theirs is a labor that transcends time. In a single night, they may transport hundreds of kilograms of vegetation, enough to reshape the ecosystem around them. The trees they prune grow back stronger. The soil they churn becomes richer. The fungi they tend transform death into nourishment. They are gardeners of the earth itself. To imagine their world is to invert the forest, a mirror image beneath the roots, where leaves feed shadows and shadows feed life. Down in the dark, the temperature never changes, the rhythm never stops. Larvae pulse like tiny hearts. Workers feed them in cycles measured by scent. The fungus blooms quietly, fed by green pulp and devotion. And in that constant heartbeat, the ants themselves fade into the background, becoming not individuals, not even a species, but a function, the pulse of the planet's slow respiration. When morning comes and the sun warms the soil, the colony below remains unchanged. Only the entrances shimmer with activity. Soldiers standing guard, workers emerging like smoke from vents. Above them, the forest thrives, oblivious yet sustained. And perhaps that is the greatest irony, that creatures so small, so voiceless, hold the balance of worlds. They farm, they build, they endure, without recognition, without pause. If you could place your ear to the ground and listen, you might hear them. The faint rustle of leaves carried into darkness, the sigh of soil shifting around their tunnels, the slow exhale of a civilization breathing beneath your feet. Above, the weaver ants sow the sky with silk. Below, the leaf cutters plough the earth with jaws. Between them, the world holds together, suspended, rooted, whole. And as the night deepens, somewhere between the wind in the trees and the whisper of soil, you begin to feel it. The gentle truth that everything, even the smallest life, is part of the same endless weaving, the same rhythm of making and unmaking, the same silent song that keeps the forest alive and the sleepless world at peace. In the steaming jungles of Southeast Asia, where the air is thick with the breath of earth and the hum of life vibrates through every leaf, there are nights when the forest floor itself begins to tremble. Not from thunder, not from wind, but from the synchronized movement of countless legs marching to a rhythm older than silence. It starts as a whisper beneath the soil, a vibration that gathers shape and density until it becomes a moving texture of sound. The Cerbera diversa, the marauder ants, awakening from their hidden chambers. The first thing you notice about them is the imbalance. Bodies that seem designed by contrast. Tiny workers scurrying like drops of ink beside soldiers, whose heads are as large as beans, heavy and round, glowing faintly under the diffused moonlight. Their colour ranges from deep mahogany to burnished gold, a gradient of authority that marks their purpose in the colony. The small workers dart like sparks, fast and numerous, while the soldiers advance with the steadiness of living tanks, their enormous mandibles opening and closing with deliberate precision. They move in torrents, never alone. Each colony may hold more than 1 million, and when they mobilize, the earth seems to shift colour. A slow tide of brown and amber spilling over the roots and rocks, devouring the landscape not with speed but with certainty. The sound they make is neither hiss nor hum, but something between rainfall and static, a whisper of friction as their bodies brush against leaves and bark. To step into their path is to feel the pulse of a living current pass around your ankles, the forest itself flowing by. Beneath the surface, the colony's tunnels spiral downward in endless circuits, chambers connected like organs in a vast unseen body. At its centre lives the queen, colossal and unseen, surrounded by caretakers that feed her, clean her, and carry away her eggs to nurseries bathed in warmth. Her pulse, a slow chemical heartbeat, sets the tempo of the entire nation. From her scent, all hierarchy flows. The difference between worker and soldier, between forager and nurse, between birth and death. The marauders are omnivorous, but what they hunt is motion itself. They chase anything that moves, insects and centipedes, spiders and worms, sometimes even small vertebrates, all swallowed by the sheer persistence of number. They coordinate through scent, trails laid like invisible threads across the jungle floor. When a scout finds prey, it releases a signal sharp as electricity. Within moments, the trail ignites. Waves of ants surge forward, each following the chemical road as if drawn by gravity. At the centre of every raid, these soldiers stand like pillars. Their heads, massive and gleaming, are built for crushing, not cutting. They grip, hold, and grind until the prey stops moving. The smaller workers swarm over the body, tearing it apart, carrying pieces back to the nest. Nothing is wasted, not even the scent of victory, which they clean from one another's bodies with delicate, methodical gestures before returning underground. If you kneel and listen close, you might hear their world breathe, the soft rasp of mandibles working, the faint vibration of feet striking soil, the chemical whispers that guide their every motion. They have no eyes for beauty, no language for mercy, yet their order is almost divine in its precision. There is something holy in the way they move, not cruel, not kind, just inevitable. When night deepens, they vanish into the earth again. The forest settles, the sound fades, and only the faint scent of formic acid lingers in the damp air, a memory of motion, the ghost of discipline. And then, somewhere far away across the continent, where the soil turns red and the horizon bleeds into savanna, another army begins to stir. In the dry forests and grasslands of sub-Saharan Africa, under skies heavy with heat and dust, a different kind of march begins. Slower, heavier, more deliberate, as if each step carries the weight of history itself. The Megaponera analis, the Matabele ant, rises from its burrows in disciplined silence, forming columns that cut through the sand like dark rivers. They are taller, broader, their bodies painted in shades of black iron and matte ash. Their legs, long and spined, move in careful rhythm. No scurrying, no chaos, just the steady pulse of warriors who know the path by memory. They hunt termites, the hidden architects of Africa's earth, and to reach them, they must breach fortresses of clay and teeth. When the column moves, scouts lead ahead, weaving scent into the ground like invisible rope. Behind them follow the soldiers, broad-headed, powerful, their mandibles shaped like curved blades. The air fills with the dry, metallic scent of battle before it even begins. When they reach a termite mound, the assault unfolds with geometric precision. At a signal no human can hear, the front line breaks open the mound's surface. Termites pour out, white and blind, their soft bodies spilling like dust. The soldiers of the Matabele dive in, biting and crushing, their movements slow but absolute. Each ant fights alone, yet every motion contributes to a greater design, a choreography of destruction as old as the soil itself. The termites retaliate, biting legs, snapping jaws, clinging until they are torn apart, but the ants continue, relentless, consuming, reclaiming. When the battle ends, the living drag the dead. The air smells of clay, acid, and the faint sweetness of decay. And then, something astonishing happens. Something almost human. The Matabele ants pause. Amid the wreckage of their raid, they begin to search, not for food, but for the wounded. Those missing limbs, bleeding, trembling. They are found and lifted gently in the jaws of their sisters. The rescuers turn, retracing the trail home. The column reorganizes, moving with the same order but slower now, weighted by compassion. At the nest entrance, the injured are carried inside. Other workers surround them, cleaning the wounds with saliva rich in antimicrobial enzymes. Scientists once thought this behavior accidental, a coincidence of care, until they measured the results. The survival rate of treated ants doubles. Their hospitals are not places of rest but of ritual, caretakers tending the injured until they can walk again, until they can rejoin the war. No ceremony marks their recovery, no song greets their return, but the order continues, the army heals itself. In the dark of their tunnels, the air thick with heat, they live without light yet not without empathy. Their society is built on rhythm and response, scent commands, touch confirms, and silence completes. The Matabele do not fight for territory, they fight for equilibrium. Their predation keeps termite populations in check, their raids aerate the soil, their motion stirs nutrients into the ground. They are both destroyers and healers, balancing life through death, war through mercy. When dawn approaches and the first rays of sunlight slice through the haze, the column dissolves back into the earth. The scent trails fade, the vibrations still. Above, the savannah resumes its ancient chorus. Birds, insects, wind, unaware of the quiet wars fought beneath its skin. And yet, for those who have seen the Matabele march, something lingers. The image of them carrying their wounded through dust, their silhouettes outlined in the red light of morning, remains fixed in the mind, a vision of discipline softened by tenderness. It is proof that in the vast machinery of survival, even instinct can make room for grace. If you place your hand on the ground there, you might feel a faint rhythm, the pulse of their tunnels beneath your palm, warm and alive. It is not the beat of violence or triumph, but of something deeper, the continuity of care, the unbroken thread of life that weaves even through the most ruthless corners of existence. They are the surgeons of the soil, the soldiers of silence, the healers of their own wounds. They do not know mercy as we define it, yet they practice it with a devotion that humbles the noise of our own compassion. When the rains come and the red dust turns to mud, their trails are erased, their battles forgotten. But below, in chambers carved by patience, the wounded rest, the larvae feed, the queen breathes, and the empire of healing endures. Two worlds, the marauders of Asia and the Matabele of Africa, never meet, yet share the same pulse. An understanding written not in thought, but in movement, in rhythm, in the quiet contract between creation and survival. One fights as the flood, unstoppable, devouring, infinite. The other fights as the tide, retreating, returning, mending. Together they remind us that even war in the language of nature can become a kind of music, the drumming of rain on leaf, the heartbeat of earth beneath dust, a sound that soothes rather than frightens, that hums rather than screams, that reminds the sleepless that somewhere, deep below, the world continues to move, to heal, to breathe. And as you listen to the faint murmur beneath the surface, you might find that it calms you, for in their endless labour, in their quiet compassion, the ants have become what the earth always intended, a memory of peace written in the language of footsteps. There are forests where death blooms quietly, where the air itself seems to hold its breath, and where among the fallen leaves something neither alive nor dead begins to move. It is not a ghost nor a shadow, but a worker ant, alone, trembling, its gait unsteady, its eyes unfocused. It climbs a blade of grass not for food, not for duty, but because something inside it whispers upward. This is Camponotus leonardi, once a creature of perfect obedience, now a puppet strung by something smaller still, the fungus Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the parasite that turns life into theatre. To see it is to witness the soft violence of control. The ant does not know it is dying. It simply follows a command that feels like instinct. It climbs higher, its body shaking, its legs dragging in slow rhythm. The forest hums around it, insects calling, wind moving through ferns. But inside its tiny skull, the fungus writes a new script. Spores that entered through its joints and breath now fill its muscles, replacing its will with their own. It moves as if sleepwalking, following light patterns and temperature gradients invisible to anything human. The fungus does not seek the tree, nor the leaf, but the perfect place, the underside of a small vein, at a height where humidity and shade will cradle its growth. When the moment comes, the ant stops. It opens its mandibles wide and bites down on the leaf's vein with a force far beyond its size, the final order of the parasite locking its jaw forever, then it dies. From the back of its head, within hours, a pale stalk begins to grow, pushing through chitin and bone, emerging like a thought escaping flesh. It will grow for days, turning darker, harder, until at last it bursts open, releasing new spores that drift through the forest air like invisible ash. The forest floor, if you look closely, is littered with them. Hundreds of corpses clinging to leaves, tiny brown jaws fixed in their death bite, each with a single stalk rising toward the light. A garden of the dead. To walk among them is to walk through a silence that feels holy. The air smells faintly of damp wood and decay, but there is a sweetness in it too, something that suggests continuation rather than end. Scientists who study these zombie ants describe the fungus as an evolutionary marvel, a parasite that has learned to steer not only the muscles but the behaviour of its host. It can adjust its timing so precisely that the ant's death occurs at the optimal height for spore dispersal. The fungus even releases chemicals to preserve the body from other microbes until its fruiting body matures. But beyond science, there is poetry in this cruelty, a strange serenity in the way life uses life to keep existing. At dawn, when light filters through the canopy in narrow beams, the stalks glisten. Tiny droplets of moisture gather on their tips like tears, and beneath them, the forest continues, unaware, untouched, alive. If you could listen close enough, beneath the hum of insects and the distant call of birds, you might hear it. The slow expansion of fungal threads beneath the bark, the microscopic thunder of spores releasing into the air, the quiet gasp of one more ant taking its first step toward the last climb. And yet, in this horror, there is no malice. The fungus does not hate its host, it merely becomes it. The ant's body becomes vessel, its death becomes soil, its sacrifice becomes sustenance. In the endless economy of nature, even possession is a kind of participation. The forest knows no tragedy, only transformation. But not far from these haunted groves, in the rain-drenched jungles of Borneo, another story of death unfolds. Not one of manipulation, but of choice. Here, in colonies hidden beneath bark and leaves, live the Colobopsis explodens, the exploding ants, soldiers who guard their nests with bodies primed to rupture. Their existence is a covenant written in chemistry. When danger comes, they do not flee, they detonate. Their bodies are small, fragile, unassuming, workers barely longer than a fingernail coloured in warm shades of amber and honey. But beneath that translucent skin lies a secret. 2 large glands filled with a sticky, toxic fluid that shimmers yellow like resin. The substance is meant not to kill, but to bind, to entangle, to stop enemies in their tracks. When a predator, a centipede, a spider, or even another ant, invades their nest, the soldiers rush forward. They grapple with the intruder, locking jaws and legs, and then, in one silent motion, contract their abdominal muscles so violently that their body walls burst. The glands rupture, spraying the yellow secretion outward, coating the attacker, gluing it in place. The soldier dies instantly, but the nest survives. The act is quiet, almost graceful. There is no explosion as we imagine it, no noise, no smoke, only a small burst of colour in the dim green air, a flash of amber against the bark, and then stillness. The resin hardens within minutes, sealing the enemy to the earth like a fossil in formation. The others continue their work, cleaning the battlefield, carrying away the remains, repairing the entrance with soil and saliva. What is remarkable is not their sacrifice, but their calm. The soldiers do not rush blindly into death. They assess, they decide, they act. To see them fight is to witness purpose distilled to its purest form. Their courage is chemical, their devotion molecular, and yet as alien as their behaviour seems, there is a tenderness beneath it, the knowledge, unspoken but absolute, that survival is not an individual act but a shared rhythm. Inside the nest, life continues with quiet precision. The queen, deep within her chamber, never sees the sacrifice of her defenders. She feels it instead, a shift in scent, a tremor in the collective hum. The pheromones of alarm fade, replaced by the calm signature of home. The colony breathes again. Outside, the rain falls, washing away the yellow stains, and the forest absorbs the loss with indifferent grace. To a human eye, it may seem tragic, to live only to explode, to exist only for the sake of others. But within the pattern of life that stretches across centuries of forest soil, there is no tragedy in function. The exploding ant is not a martyr, it is a note in the music of equilibrium. Its death prevents greater loss, its sacrifice sustains the collective. Even its body, torn and emptied, becomes nourishment for the soil, one more offering to the endless cycle that feeds the roots of the trees above. The scent of the resin lingers, faintly sweet, faintly metallic, mingling with the aroma of rain and bark. When sunlight breaks through the canopy, it glints off droplets caught in spider silk, and for a moment the whole jungle looks gilded, as if acknowledging the price of peace. There is a strange symmetry between the zombie ant and the exploding ant. One dies because it has lost itself, the other because it remembers too well what it is. One climbs to die under command, the other stays to die by choice. Yet both, in their own ways, give their bodies back to the forest, turning death into continuation, obedience into harmony. In the endless theatre of the jungle, these two species play opposite roles in the same play. One becomes the stage, the other the curtain call. And when the night deepens and the rain begins again, their stories blur. Possession and sacrifice, control and devotion, all dissolving into the single truth that life to persist must always consume itself. If you lie on the forest floor and close your eyes, the air hums around you, soft, rhythmic, filled with 1,000 secret pulses. Somewhere above, an ant is climbing toward its death, its mandibles tightening on a leaf vein. Somewhere below, another is tightening its abdomen, ready to burst for the sake of its kin. The sound they make together is almost imperceptible. A sigh, a heartbeat, the sound of inevitability. And as the forest breathes through them, through us, through everything that lives and dies and feeds, you begin to understand that even the smallest creatures carry within them the architecture of eternity. One surrender at a time, one quiet end leading into another quiet beginning. In the shadowed clearings of European forests, where mist drifts between the trees like memory that refuses to settle, there are colonies whose peace is not their own, whose walls are built from the labour of the conquered, whose children are raised by the hands of strangers that do not know they are slaves. Beneath fallen leaves and brittle roots lives the Polyergus rufescens, the Amazon ant, red as rust, elegant as a blade, and utterly dependent on the obedience of others. Its body gleams in the half-light, long and narrow, the sheen of old bronze under a layer of soil. It walks with a soldier's grace and a thief's silence, its antennae flickering through the air like questions it already knows the answer to. It does not forage, it does not farm, it cannot even feed its own young. It exists only to conquer, to command, and to remember. Each summer, when the air grows thick with heat and the scent of ripened grass, the Amazons prepare for war. The scouts, slender and fast, weave through the undergrowth, searching for the nests of their victims. Other ant colonies, often of the Formica fusca, whose workers are diligent, strong, and most importantly, impressionable. Once the location is found, the message is sent, not in sound, not in sight, but in the invisible script of pheromone, a signal written in air and read by instinct. Within hours, an army gathers, 100 strong, a river of red bodies flowing over moss and stone. When they attack, the forest holds its breath. The Amazon ants surge into the enemy nest with the precision of machinery, mandibles locking, legs slicing, the smell of acid and fear filling the tunnels. They do not seek the workers. They seek the brood, the larvae and pupae that will become the next generation. They take them gently, almost tenderly, carrying them between their jaws like treasures. Within minutes, they retreat, vanishing into the forest, their prize still sleeping. Back in their own nest, the stolen young awaken, surrounded by scent. Everything smells right, the air, the soil, the bodies that touch them, because the Amazons have coated them with their pheromones. And so, when they hatch, they do not see enemies. They see home. They grow into obedient servants who will nurse the Amazon queen, feed her children, clean her soldiers, and never know they were stolen. The entire colony lives by this lie, a fragrance so powerful that it replaces truth. The Amazon queen herself is magnificent and terrible. Larger than her warriors, her exoskeleton glows with deep crimson, her mandibles slender, curved, designed not for cutting but for command. She rarely moves, yet her presence saturates the nest. Her scent binds her subjects tighter than any chain, turning the colony into a single breathing organism. Around her, the enslaved workers move in rhythm, grooming her, feeding her, raising her offspring, their gestures mechanical, their loyalty chemical. The queen's own daughters, born in this fog of perfume, never learn to care for themselves. They emerge already dependent, their mandibles ill-suited for labour, their instincts sharpened only for raid and rule. Outside, the forest does not judge. The trees stand indifferent. The soil absorbs the blood. The rain washes away the tracks. But beneath the calm, something ancient trembles. The echo of control, the delicate cruelty of memory rewritten. To the human mind, such manipulation seems monstrous, but in the slow arithmetic of evolution, it is merely efficiency. Survival requires not strength, but cunning, not possession of land, but possession of loyalty. And so, year after year, the Red Legions move through the forest like history repeating itself, each generation born into the empire of illusion, each queen carrying in her scent the formula for obedience. When they die, the soil takes them without judgment, folding them into the roots of grass that will one day feed another world. At dusk, when the air cools and mist begins to rise again, their nests fall silent. Inside, the workers, the stolen and the conquerors alike, sleep in the same chambers, breathing the same air. There is no hatred, no awareness. Only the chemical peace of forgetting. And perhaps that is what makes their world both tragic and beautiful, that they live not knowing they are bound, and die believing they were home, far away from these red empires of memory across deserts that shimmer like glass and plains where the wind sings against sand. There walks another creature that looks like an ant but is not one. The velvet ant, the silent jewel of desolation. It is, in truth, not an ant at all, but a wingless wasp, a female of the family Mutilidae, cursed or blessed to walk the world alone. Her body is small but radiant, covered in fine hairs that shine like velvet under the sun, deep red, orange or black as if woven from fire and shadow. She moves with the confidence of something that needs no company, no queen, no colony, only purpose. In the heat of midday, when most life hides, she walks. Her legs are sturdy, her gait deliberate, every step pressing into the dust as if she owns the ground itself. Her wings are gone. Evolution traded flight for armor. Her exoskeleton is thick, unyielding, and beneath it lies the most potent sting in her realm. Those who have felt it gave her the name Cow Killer. Though no cow has ever died by her hand, the pain alone feels mortal enough. She does not build nests or lead armies. She lives as a solitary ghost, haunting the burrows of other insects. Her mission is quiet invasion. She seeks the underground chambers of bees and wasps, where larvae rest in cells lined with pollen and wax. When she finds one, she slips inside, lays a single egg and vanishes. Her offspring will hatch, feed on the host's larva, and emerge alone, ready to continue the cycle of beautiful cruelty. The desert, indifferent and immense, seems to honour her solitude. The sand glows around her, the wind hums low, and her shadow stretches long on the cracked earth. She needs nothing, no scent trails, no orders, no companions. Her life is an unbroken line of instinct, precise as mathematics, quiet as prayer. The world calls her parasite, but in truth, she is balance, the shadow that keeps abundance from spilling over, the correction in the endless equation of life. At night, when the air cools and the desert blooms with silence, she rests beneath stones still warm from the day. The stars shimmer above her, not as symbols but as facts, the same cold points that have watched every birth and every sting since time began. Her body glows faintly in the moonlight, the velvet hairs catching silver as she moves. In that moment she looks less like an insect and more like a thought made visible, the thought of endurance, of beauty that does not need witness. Those who have seen her say that her sting, though feared, is less terrifying than her calm. She never hesitates, never warns. Her stillness before striking is absolute, and her strike itself is final. There is no aggression in it, only clarity, a small, perfect line between life and death. To watch her cross the sand is to see independence distilled into form. She has no colony, no queen, no home but her body. Her survival is her song, her solitude, her temple. Where the Amazon ant binds others through scent, she binds herself through silence. Where the Red Army conquers the living, she conquers absence. And yet, despite their distance, there is an invisible thread between them. Both are architects of control, one outward, one inward. The Amazon rules by rewriting memory. The velvet ant rules by needing no memory at all. One lives in deception, the other in truth stripped bare. Both prove in their opposite ways that power need not roar to exist. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it simply walks away. When dawn comes, the velvet ant disappears into shadow, her path erased by the wind. The Amazon ants deep in their forest awaken to another day of borrowed peace, and somewhere between them, between the captivity of scent and the freedom of silence, lies the balance that keeps the world turning, the quiet understanding that all life in the end belongs to the same breath. If you listen long enough, beneath the hum of the forest or the sigh of the desert, you can hear them both, the rustle of a red legion moving through moss and the soft tread of a velvet wanderer crossing sand. One sound belongs to obedience, the other to solitude, but together they form the same rhythm, the rhythm of existence, patient and unending, the rhythm that hums in the soil beneath your bed, in the walls of your room, in the slow heartbeat of everything that endures. And as you drift towards sleep, the thought lingers, that even in the smallest beings, in the quietest corners of earth, power takes every form. The empire, the exile, the hand that commands, and the one that refuses to be held. There are corners of the human world where light hums through wires, where warmth travels not from the sun but from machines, where the smell of electricity mingles with dust and sugar. And even here, in the spaces between cables, behind the forgotten sockets of kitchens and offices, life moves in silence, translucent and unnoticed. This is the realm of the Tapenoma melanocephalum, the ghost ant, a creature so faint it seems made of air and reflection, a species that learned not to conquer the forest or the desert but the walls of our own making. Its body is almost invisible, the head a dark pin of thought, the abdomen milky white, its legs translucent like threads of vapour. It is less a creature than a suggestion of one, a shimmer at the edge of sight. To watch a colony of them under light is to watch movement detached from form, a procession of glimmers, a choreography of emptiness. They live wherever we forget to look, under keyboards, inside the plastic grooves of telephones, behind picture frames, in the small hollows of sugar jars and the spaces between window panes. They walk where warmth and sweetness converge, where the temperature never falls too low, where the hum of machines becomes the forest replacement. And they survive because we do, feeding on crumbs, on the invisible residue of our comfort, on the tiny civilizations of mould and grease that gather in our absence. Their strength lies not in number or ferocity, but in invisibility. They move through our world like a scent, impossible to stop, impossible to fully notice. When crushed, they release a faint aroma of coconut, delicate, unexpected, a perfume of sweetness hidden within anonymity. It is as if the universe decided that even the smallest ghost deserved a gentle farewell. Their colonies are small, scattered, fragmented like thoughts. A nest can exist within the hollow of a pen cap, a fold of fabric, a crack in the floor, and when disturbed, they vanish not by fleeing but by dissolving into invisibility. The trick of transparency perfected into survival. Workers carry their larvae wrapped in air, moving them to another shadowed crevice within minutes, the transition as smooth as breath. They do not sting, they do not fight, they persist. Scientists have followed them from humid tropics to high-rise apartments, tracing their spread through ships and boxes, through the unintentional kindness of trade. They are travellers of our global empire, silent passengers in cardboard, wood and glass, their scentless determination mirrored in our own. The ghost ant is the echo of civilization, fragile, adaptable, eternal. And yet, in their fragility lies a kind of grace. They thrive in places that would kill others, feeding on sugar water left for houseplants, on droplets of juice, on the tiny fractures of routine. Their queen hides in places smaller than imagination, A corner of insulation, a fold in a curtain, a seam between walls. There, she breathes in darkness, laying eggs that gleam like dew. Around her, workers move like vapour, attending her in silence, a congregation of ghosts in the electric age. At night, when lights go out and the hum of machines fades, they emerge. Across countertops, along window edges, through the small labyrinths of our neglect, they wander, an unseen nation reclaiming the quiet. Their feet trace lines of sweetness. Their movements leave behind invisible trails that only they can read. And though they live their entire lives inches away from us, we rarely see them until one glimmers in the wrong light, a fleeting spark at the edge of sleep. To crush one is to release that faint tropical scent, soft, sweet, and almost human, a smell that lingers like a sigh of memory. It is the ghost's reminder that even the smallest lives carry their own poetry, their own echo of existence. They are the children of our warmth, the inheritors of our stillness, the invisible architects of the quiet corners we never think about. In them, the line between nature and machine blurs. They are ghosts not because they haunt, but because they adapt. Translucent proof that life, no matter how faint, refuses to disappear. Far from electricity and walls, where the air is bone dry and the sun bleaches even the stones to silence, there lives another civilization, one not of shadows but of endurance. Beneath the deserts of the American Southwest and the dry plains of Mexico, under soil that cracks by day and freezes by night, the Myrmecocystus mexicanus, the honey ant, keeps a secret that glows in darkness. Their colonies lie deep, often meters underground, carved into chambers that glimmer faintly with stored sweetness. The air down there is cool, heavy with the scent of earth and sugar, and within those chambers hang the most extraordinary beings in the world of ants, the repletes, the living vessels. They are not workers, not soldiers, not queens, but storage, swollen sisters suspended from the ceiling by their legs, their abdomens distended into golden globes, translucent and shining like drops of amber. They are the colony's pantry, the living jars of honey that breathe. Each replete began as a normal worker. Fed by her sisters until her abdomen expanded, she grew round and luminous, her body transformed into a living reservoir. Inside her glows the nectar of survival, honeydew from aphids, floral sugars, the condensed essence of summer. When drought or famine comes, when no blossom remains and no rain falls, the workers climb the walls of the chamber and gently stroke the replete's antennae. In response, the swollen bodies contract and droplets of golden liquid form at their mouths, nourishment shared mouth to mouth, sweetness that tastes of sunlight remembered. To watch them in the dim light of a scientist's lens is to see a cathedral of gold breathing beneath the desert. The air vibrates softly with the sound of their slow movements, the faint rubbing of legs against stone, the whisper of antennae against swollen skin. Nothing here hurries. The honey ants live by the calendar of eternity. Their tunnels spiral downward like the lines of a prayer. At the top, foragers rise with the dawn, walking across the sand that burns beneath their feet. They carry small fragments of nectar, seeds, or dead insects, bringing each back through the furnace of noon to the cool heart below. Each trip is an act of devotion. One grain of sustenance returned to the golden womb of the colony. By nightfall, when stars burn white against the black sky, the desert cools, and the ants emerge again, glowing faintly under starlight, their abdomens reflecting pale gold. The repletes, motionless above, dream in sweetness. They cannot move, cannot fight, cannot flee. Their bodies are so heavy that if they fall, they die. And yet within their stillness they embody abundance. Each one is both burden and blessing, a promise that hunger will end, that tomorrow will still come. Their patience is the colony's hope made flesh. When a replete dies, her sisters gently tear her open, consuming what remains of her golden gift before her body dries into dust. Nothing is wasted. Even death feeds life. The sweetness she carried flows into others, into larvae, into the queen's endless creation of more life. The circle remains unbroken. The desert above may seem empty, but below, a silent radiance continues, light without flame, wealth without greed, faith without gods. The honey ant has built a civilization entirely around trust, that the one who holds abundance will never keep it, that the one who needs will be fed, that sacrifice, however quiet, sustains everything. Sometimes, at dusk, when the wind drifts low and carries the scent of sage and dust, a single forager appears at the mouth of the nest. She pauses, antennae tasting the air, then retreats, sealing the entrance behind her. Somewhere beneath, her sisters dream of summer flowers they have never seen, of nectar flowing like rain, of warmth stored in their bellies until the next dawn. And if you could listen then, lying with your ear against the sand, you might hear the slow pulse of sweetness beneath your hand, the heartbeat of the repletes, steady, forgiving, eternal. Two worlds, one invisible, one buried, one transparent as glass, one glowing like amber. The ghost ant thrives among circuits and cables, turning our waste into refuge. The honey ant breathes beneath dust, turning scarcity into abundance. Both are miracles of adaptation. Both whisper the same truth, that survival is not conquest, but continuity. And as you lie there, in whatever silence holds you now, the hum of your room, the echo of your own breath, you realize that the world beneath you is alive and patient, that even the smallest hearts beat with the rhythm of resilience. The ghost walks in your walls, the honey glows under your feet, and between them flows the same quiet current of life, transparent, golden, unending. If you place your hand upon the ground, truly still, truly listening, you will feel it. The faintest vibration, a pulse that does not belong to you, but to something older, smaller, and endlessly patient. Beneath the dust and root, beneath the soft bones of fallen leaves, beneath the stories of rain and stone, an empire hums. It has no walls, no kings, no banners, no name, only rhythm. The quiet, tireless rhythm of legs and scent and purpose, moving through the darkness as if the earth itself were breathing through them. For millions of years they have walked, unseen but constant, the architects of soil, the keepers of balance, the unrecorded heartbeat of forests and deserts and cities alike. Their feet stitch continents together, their tunnels shape the air that feeds the trees, their dead feed the roots that become the shade beneath which others are born. They build with what they are given, dust, leaves, resin, light, and in return, they ask for nothing but the right to continue. Above them, the world changes without pause. Empires rise and vanish, oceans swallow coasts, machines replace thunder. But down here, beneath the noise, the rhythm remains unchanged. The bullet ant still walks with the calm of suffering endured. The army ant still moves like black rain across the forest floor. The fire ant still burns, the carpenter still builds, the leaf cutter still tends its gardens of white, the matabele still carries its wounded home, the zombie still climbs toward its chosen leaf, the exploding soldier still opens itself into the air, the Amazon still rewrites memory, the ghost still hums behind our walls. The honey replete still shines beneath the desert, and through them all runs one thread. Patient, unbroken, unseen, the pulse of persistence that does not ask to be remembered. If you listen long enough, their world becomes a lullaby. The rustle of soil turning, the whisper of feet brushing past roots, the faint breath of formic acid dissolving in rain. They are the rain, the silence after rain, the stillness before dawn. They are the pause between heartbeats when the earth forgets its own name. Their wars are brief, their peace eternal. Their cities collapse and rise again in the same breath. They do not leave ruins or monuments, only soil, and in that soil, life. Everything we call forest begins with their labour. Everything we call ruin ends with their touch. They are the unseen hands that sculpt the world, the patience that outlives every storm, the quiet architects of continuity. And perhaps that is why, when you stand alone at night and feel the ground tremble beneath you, you mistake it for wind, or thunder, or the turning of your own heart. But it is them, the millions who never sleep, the empire that whispers instead of rules, the civilization that exists only in motion. They do not pray, but their labour is prayer. They do not sing, but their movement is song. They do not dream, and yet they build dreams for others to live in. All that we fear, pain, hunger, loss, death, they have turned into rhythm. The sting that burns becomes protection. The hunger that gnaws becomes balance. The death that claims becomes food. They are the masters of transmutation, the silent alchemists who turn the chaos of existence into order so subtle it feels like calm. And as the night deepens, as the light of the screen fades and the hum of the world grows softer, you begin to hear it more clearly. The infinite murmur beneath everything, the slow movement of purpose without ego, the quiet truth that to live is to build, to feed, to tend, to remember, and to return. There is no end to their story, only continuation. The queen breathes, the worker walks, the soil shifts, and life begins again. And so, to every creature who has ever worked without witness, to every soul who has ever carried something heavier than itself and kept going, to every dream that survives by patience rather than power, this is your mirror, your echo, your small eternity. Now the forest sleeps, the wolves hum, the desert cools. The ground is alive beneath you, murmuring in its endless language of effort. Close your eyes. Let the sound sink through you. The sound of millions of footsteps smaller than thought, lighter than time, each one saying the same word without voice, without end. Continue. And as you drift into sleep, the earth hums with you. The empire keeps moving, and in the spaces between your breaths, something beneath the soil builds again, patient, invisible, and eternal. Good night.